Hello, so my name is Iain, as it says up there, and I am Quartz's EMEA Director of Branded Content. Quartz, or QZ.com, for those of you that don't know, is an online publication that launched a little over 6 years ago, and since then we've grown rapidly. We describe ourselves as a guide to the new global economy for people excited by change. Apologies to the translators that have to try and translate that. What that means is, it is effectively, we tell business news stories, but we take a human angle on all of them and make sure that at the heart of everything we do is what it means to you and why you should care. My role is on the branded content side, so I work with brands all over the world, from sort of big consultancies like EY and PwC to a number of large travel brands, both in sort of traditional hotels or experiences or airlines and things like that. And I help them bring their brand stories to life to our audience.
So we'll get there in a minute, but we were just talking before this outside, actually, having some food and maybe some white wine. I will not say if we actually did. You have a background of a journalist.
Yes.
So you're a writer.
I am a writer, but content is so much more than that, particularly now.
That's exactly the question we're leading for. So what is currently branded content?
Branded content, in its broadest definition, is any form of slightly more in-depth advertising, and it can really take any forms. You can, it can be video, it can be 360 imagery, it can be magazines, it can be feature films even, it can be chatbots and things like that. And we're actually seeing a lot more in the chatbot space now.
Well, we can go there now, actually, the chatbot, because I remember when, I don't know if any one of you reads Quartz at all, maybe you stumbled upon some articles. They also have an app, I don't know if it's still going.
We do.
And the thing that was a bit the story, the point of the app, instead of being a traditional app, there's no such definition as traditional app, but the whole interaction within the app was as if it was a chat.
Absolutely.
You were talking to a bot and asking about, well, these are the top 3 stories today, and it will send you top 3 stories. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So when we started, we were very deliberate in that we wanted to make sure we were constantly iterating and changing the way we do business and the way we exist, and it was very deliberate. If you look at sort of old school outlets like the Times in London or the New York Times, they don't really change. They still have a print product 150 years on, even though print is in decline. And we were very deliberate that we wanted to constantly change and constantly be on the forefront of where our readers are. And I think a number of people have touched on this today. Where most people are now, where you need to speak to them, is on their phones. And you don't want that experience to be jarring. You want it to feel pleasant. You want it to feel natural. And what's the thing that everyone does on their phones? I can see a few people now. Everyone messages. And so bringing the messaging experience to bringing the messaging experience to life and inserting a brand in there is a great way to have a natural interaction.
But before we go to inserting the brand in there, is this interaction also, do you know, you probably don't yet, but you don't really know where the person is at that moment in time he or she is requesting maybe the 3 stories. It will go to the specific chatbots a bit later, but meaning that the content is also very nugget style. I'm going to get a very short brief on something, and maybe I will see more or not, but you're not feeding me that more unless I actually want to. Correct?
Yes, it's all one of our sort of mantras, if you like. One of the things that guides us is respect for the user. So as a site, that means we don't do any horrible pop-up banners or things like that everyone hates, but it also means respect for the user's time. So not trying to make them go down a long rabbit hole to serve something you want. It's about serving them. It also it is about giving them the best possible information. So one of the things we do is, in the app specifically, is just because we have written a story on our site doesn't mean we're going to direct you to that. If someone else tells the story in a better way, we will send you to them. And we're quite proud of the way that we want the story and the so what, the thing that people care about, to be front and center.
And the best stories, I mean, the reason I love working, it's not the main focus of my consultancy, but I love working with the travel industry. It's a happy industry. I know sometimes it can be burdensome and sometimes you're not happy about the numbers, but it's, travel is something that makes people happy. So now, to kind of focus our conversation with travel, tourism, destination, you just said we insert brands into that discussion. Maybe
yes.
I said it wrongly. How do you do that? Because as a pure reader, if I just put myself the outside in, I will do 2 pieces of news, and maybe the third one is actually branded content. So how can I trust? Is there still trust that, oh, this is just not yet another advertising, and is it actually something useful for me?
Okay, so there are a few different nuggets of answers I've got for you there. The first one is, one of the things we do as a business is every year run a survey of over 1,500 global executives from the likes of Google and Orange in France and all sorts of places, and we survey their attitudes to media and advertising. All this is free, by the way. If you go to insights.qz.com, it's all there. You can do whatever you want with. And one of the things we found is our audience are open to branded content. They are open to this. They actively will look at it and they will share it. It just has to provide them some value. Yeah. So one of the things, if you take one thing away today, I hope it would be this, is what you as a brand want to say is not what consumers want to hear most of the time. What you want to say and what they want to hear are poles apart, and what my job is, and where content is successful, is when you find the intersection of where these two meet. And so that's one of the things, one of my personal mantras that I'm sure I stole from either Google or YouTube or one of these, is when we are coming up with ideas for brands, is why share and why care. If you're not going to share it, it probably doesn't make you feel anything. Or in the same token, it probably doesn't make you care about it either. So it's about telling a story that, bringing the human element in and telling a story in a way that means something to someone.
So you basically just said that you're writing a story and try to find that intersection. So let's imagine, let's just drill into a little bit of detail. So I'm a hotelier in Greece, to take an example, and maybe I have budget, I don't know how, exactly what I want you to tell me, and I'm going to reach out to you or to Quartz in general and say, you know what, I'd like to have a different way to talk about my either hotel or region or city. What do I do? Do I contact you? And then what do you do? Do you kind of, is it really like a brief for an agency, or is it more like
100%.
Your story is not interesting, I cannot say anything, goodbye? So how does it work, this whole relationship, this dance?
I will never say your story is not interesting. I think it just needs a bit of a massage. So the way we work is, yes, we get briefed, and we are, say, a hotel chain, and we want to achieve broader recognition of our brand and our hotels. And the way we go about this is, firstly, unless you have an incredible hotel that is very storied. I don't know, I was recently in Copenhagen, and I stayed at the Royal Copenhagen, and they have the claim to be the world's first design hotel. And most of the sort of the iconic pieces of Scandinavian furniture that you see in shops that people lust after to have in their houses.
IKEA, right? No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
They all came from that hotel. That is a great story to tell. That is an example where a property can tell a genuinely unique story that is interesting to people. however, most people don't really sort of care how many rooms you have or how many fitness centers you have. For them, it's all about going to the place. They're there to experience something. Travel is a human experience, and it's that you need to be conveying to people. And really, I think that's incredibly important.
So now, let's assume that, again, I am a hotelier. Maybe I'm a small hotelier here in Greece. I'm going to play your role, guys. And I'm like, okay, maybe first, your market, you're like this global publication. You're too big for me. I'm afraid to talk to you. You seem very nice, but
I'm very nice, really. You don't need to be afraid to talk to me.
But let's say, because you're a writer, because you're a storyteller, because your work implies storytelling and creating stories about experiences, how are there any like practical tips? I'm going to ask you for a moment, kind of remove your hat of being purely quartz here. What would you say is a new way, or are there new ways of storytelling? How has that evolved? Because 10 years ago, I mean, we were talking about that also. 10 years ago, it's like you put a picture of a nice beach and people will come, right? And now there's competition about thousands of nice beaches in thousands of different countries. How do you make them physically come, or at least have the trigger, the envy to say, this is a destination that one day I will come to?
Absolutely. I think you touched on it very, very briefly in your opening remarks this morning, where you're saying that people don't spend a lot of time planning anymore. A lot of people, particularly business travelers, find themselves in a destination and they're kind of there, and they haven't done the 4 weeks of looking on TripAdvisor, looking on the culture trip and things like that. So they need some kind of idea as to what to do where they're there. They want to go out and experience something. And your sort of most powerful weapon is your local knowledge. And that's beyond just, if you go down there, there's a pharmacy, and if you go down there, there's a great beach. Okay, there's a great beach there, but actually, is there a bar that at sunset, you can see the sand, the sea, the sun going down, it's stunning. It's that sort of things, those sort of tips people want to know. And that is a great way to produce incredibly authentic content, because by its very nature it's authentic. These are your tips. And I think any hotelier should be able to do that in their area. And it's ask the staff, have sort of get staff to tweet out their favorite bars and why. It was Cash who mentioned the map that the hostel in Paris did. Something like that not only works great within your property and within hotels, but also is great for things to be shared online and for people to comment on, and maybe even at that point you can go a little bit further and start looking at user-generated recommendations and bringing those in. So if one of your guests went to this bar recommendation you've got, they took a beautiful Instagram shot of it, why not pull that in? It sort of close the loop, so to speak, and show that people are genuinely using your recommendations and adding more content to your site or social channels.
I was about to say, because you just mentioned Instagram, that the advantage probably out of using photos is that it requires seemingly less work than actually writing an entire piece of content, especially if you're not a writer like you. I would suck at it.
It also doesn't have a language barrier, which I think is very important. Things like photos and videos where you're experiencing something, particularly now with 360-degree video, where you can embed it on a website, people can have an explore around, they can whet their appetite for a destination, but also you can, if they have a VR headset, and I know I'm working with a company at the moment who are putting VR headsets into first and business class lounges across Europe, so people can experience these things.
Starts with an L?
Sorry?
Starts with an L, the airline? Yes. Yeah,
I've
tried it, actually.
And it's a great way for people to kind of
actually
explore.
Experience the...
And the thing is as well, while many moons ago this sort of thing was quite expensive, this is the sort of thing you can do yourself now. A 360-degree camera costs about €300. You can get a very good one. Even on your phone with a panorama, you can do 180. These are the sorts of things that it's very accessible for you to do, and really allows potential guests to experience somewhere and get excited to book.
Don't you think as well here, and again putting myself in your place, that it seems a bit like off-putting, you know? I'm older, I'm like, oh my God, I don't understand how to do a 180 camera, where do I go? I've never had an Instagram. So what would you say that probably most of the people here have maybe younger staff, I just ask them, so where do you hang out online? Where should we do? Maybe should we even give you the authorization to do it for us? Is that something that you've seen as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think social media is an incredibly powerful tool, particularly in travel. As certainly over the last few years, there have been stories of hotels just so booked up because there's a few people that share something on Instagram, and everyone wants to go and do that. And I think if you don't have a presence on these, you should, at least just for responding to people, as this is where a lot of the younger generation voice their feelings about things on. So even if it's just to maintain your brand, I think it's something that people certainly should be doing.
And also maybe because, I mean, the reason I'm asking all these questions, that I want to especially talk about only Instagram, is that I've seen during research that we've done in my company that you see more and more, especially this is clearly the younger generation, will choose destinations according to the Instagram pictures they're seeing. This looks really cool, I want to be there. Actually, EasyJet is trialing currently through AI, big word here, but they're trying currently to being able to say, you press on a button, you say, I like this picture, and EasyJet, if it's in Europe, will actually say, here's the plane tickets and which hotels you should go to according to the picture. So this is something that at some point will come. It's not only like, oh, where is it? And then you try to find it if there's no location, but actually brand, in that case, EasyJet is understanding that it's a big way to actually pushing people towards destinations. So
that's all about the convenience factor there
exactly,
as well,
right?
and it's making it easy for people. You put up this morning around Alexa, take me to Greece, and while there may have been a little bit of a titter across the room, myself included, we're getting there genuinely, and there'll be a few more steps people will need to do before they're incredibly comfortable with that. But this is certainly something we're seeing.
So jumping on that, maybe you're maybe a small atelier, or maybe should you, for instance, kind of band together on your region, maybe you're like 5 or 6 hotels. Yeah, you're competitors, but at the same time, you all share the same beaches.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you're also seeing, maybe that people, because again, I don't know what type, maybe you can say it actually, what types of, I don't know if you're allowed to or want to say the brands you've been working with Quartz. Are they all only global, very big brands and global, like very big destinations? Or have you actually worked with like smaller units as well?
They tend to be the global ones, purely because they tend to be specialist hotels within those groups, but they tend to be the groups on a sort of a larger brand campaign almost, as opposed to focusing on specific hotels.
So to reach you, again, maybe not today, but everything gets cheaper. So to reach you, let's say down the line in 2 years, having maybe regrouping your forces with people in the same region could actually suddenly entail that the relationship could exist, because you're not just like a small hotel of 4 people and 5 rooms, but suddenly you can have like some pull, right?
Absolutely, okay. and I mean, taking myself out of the equation entirely, Quartz has an audience. Our audience enjoy us, and we know how to talk to them. But there are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of other different outlets out there. You can put your content on. You can work with to do the same thing, and at all manner of different price levels, depending on who you want to talk to and for how long, effectively.
Do you have any? I know I'm trying to stay a bit practical, not to say only on a high level, because I understand these both are important for you. Do you have any? Maybe again, as a writer, maybe someone we've done other businesses before as well, so you have this kind of very wide view. Are there any practical, I was about to use the term tips for storytelling, modern storytelling? We mentioned Instagram. Are there anything that you would tell if one of them hasn't started and is like looking at you like, okay, that sounds great, but where do I start with all this? Where would you start? If you were yourself, let's say tomorrow you buy a hotel in one of the greatest beaches here in Greece, what do you do? Where do you start yourself?
For me, it's about finding your thing. What is the one thing that you do that no one else does, or the one thing that you do better than everyone else, and that is your thing, and talk about that thing, because if you're the best at it, or you do it better than anyone else, you know more than anyone, so you have the right to talk about that. And I think talking naturally and talking authentically about that is a great place to start.
Now, to rebound on something you said at the very beginning, at the top of our conversation, we mentioned the app and the chatbots. I know, and I want you to basically tell the audience that you are developing other verticals of apps, including in the travel sector. Maybe I'm wrong, or am I right?
No, you are correct.
So
yes.
what does it do? How does it work? Because many speakers said today that the way that people are engaging with travel, how they experiencing travel, last minute, chat related. So what will your solution, what problem will it solve, basically?
So this came out as a pet project of mine and another one of my colleagues. We spend a lot of time, perhaps too much time, traveling the world, and you're in another city, you're on the company's money, so it's great, you've got a free trip somewhere, but you're stuck in meetings, and you've got a little bit of downtime around there. But as I said, you found out you were going there last week, so you didn't really do any planning, you just spent a lot of time getting ready for meetings. So we're developing a chatbot that pulls in all the sort of data that's available to it around you, that answers your questions when you're on a business trip of things to do. So if you are in, let's say, New York, you've got a couple of hours spare, you open up Facebook Messenger, it knows you're in New York because that data is available to it, you don't need to give it that. It knows it's raining outside, so it's not going to suggest you do something outdoors. It'll ask you a couple of questions initially when you start using it. Say you tell it you're really into art and your office is just off Times Square. Hey, it'll suggest why not go to MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art. It knows how much time you've got because you've told it. It knows that this is an appropriate thing for you to do. You go there afterwards. It knows because it knows where you are. Did you like that? Was that the sort of thing? And over time, it starts to build up a profile of you. So next time you've just come out of a conference in Bilbao and you've got 2 hours, it'll say, hey, why not check out the Guggenheim? You like MoMA. And it starts to take out some of the stress of figuring out what to do on business trips in your downtime. At the moment, we have a working prototype with just one city that's in London. This is something that, in order to bring to life, we feel is something that really does need to work with a brand and for them to be able to take ownership of it.
Yeah,
so,
to push it.
Yeah, it doesn't, as the way I've described it, doesn't traditionally fit into the stable of Quartz products. So it's something we are looking to partner with someone with to do. We're very excited about it. It's got a code name. We've called it Francis after Sir Francis Drake. But yes, that's something we're working on at the moment. I can't say too much more, unfortunately.
So it's not live yet?
It's not live yet, no.
Okay. You give me still access to the beta later on, please. So we have 2 more minutes, and I want to, because, again, many speakers you've heard today talked about knowing your customer, understanding your customer, understanding. So there are practical tips. For instance, there's this, and I don't know if Cash mentioned it earlier in the other panel, but there's this thing like there's hotels that will ask you, and I think I said it this morning, what is your favorite drink and what kind of nuts you like? It's not Big Brother, because basically the only thing they do is that the next time you book with them, well, in the fridge you'll have that specific drink and that specific type of nuts, right? But to your point about, I know it's Facebook Messenger, but knowing where you are, knowing if it's raining or not, at what point do you think are people ready to they know too much about me? Do you feel that maybe yourself as a traveler, you go to a hotel, they know everything, and you're like, my God, no, well, hold on. Even if I'm well-traveled, I'd rather not them to know too much. Is there a limit? Do you think that?
I think there is a limit, yes. And I think that is the same with all advertising or in any transaction where you are sort of unknown to that person other than a name. It's when they start to know too much. Probably, maybe this is just me, but one of the creepiest experiences I had was a hotel in Singapore where I had on arrival, because it was my birthday, a signed birthday card from all the staff and a little cake in there, which is a little nice, but it's also a little bit creepy when you get off a very long flight. And yeah, I think personalization is key. And I saw a study recently done by Google where they found that nearly 6 in 10, I think it was 57%, of Americans expect people to have some form of personalization and to give them the information that's most relevant to them. But I think that's the key point there. It's not overly personal information. It's information that's important to them at that time, in that moment. So if you're traveling, that is, okay, it's raining, here's an umbrella, here's some things you can do. It's when you get to the hotel and they know where you've come from, so you might have the local channels on your TV, or your maybe even your Netflix or Spotify ready on your TV when you get in.
Yeah, a funny story for that, because I have the Swiss passport, so everybody assumes that my first language is obviously German. And when you clear customs, let's say in Taipei, you put your thing and everything is like German, like what the, because again, too much personalization. No, French is my first language. Anyway, that's sadly all the time we have for today with you. Iain, are you going to stick around a little bit?
Absolutely.
So people, if you want to try to get branded content, all stick together and maybe actually pitch him something. You might be on course, and I might be reading it on the app afterwards. Thank you so much, Iain. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.